Hello, Uta Hagen here with another little, uh, uh, what do I want to call it, rumination about the soon to be famous Wu and Bowers debate. Now, you can find the first part transcribed at my Substack blog, utahagen.substack.com. And I'm just going to highlight various sections of this because, you know, big sections of it are just too long to do. And I think it's really important to highlight on what these two people are saying, these two men who ideate female persona. And I actually recommend that even if you have a hard time stomaching watching and listening to these two with their host Alex Grad on the Disagreement channel, I suggest that you watch at least from about halfway through because it does turn into some fireworks, and I'm just going to read you a sample of that. So you will find my longer ruminations on this at utahagen.substack.com. I'm actually hoping that the way in which, our friend, Mr. Bowers, Dr. Bowers, is, obfuscating and manipulating and refusing to discuss in any real way the problems with children saying that they're trans, the problems with teaching this in schools, which he denies happens, and the whole confusion, conundrum, whatever you want to call it, of children who call themselves non-binary wanting to take hormones and have some kind of surgeries or something, which really doesn't make sense. And I think what's interesting about that is, they love to say, these guys who ideate a female persona, they love to say no one else can understand our situation. Well, I would have to say that they can't understand this non-binary thing because nobody can. And no one is actually non-binary because you are your sexed body, and it's best to accept that. But anyway, Bowers is going through this business about time and kind of differentiating himself from other practitioners who rush the kids along and get them on hormones. And he talks about how there are, he has some long waiting list. So this is the time that these kids are having. And it's like, yeah, I don't think so. These kids are spending all their time on Reddit and Tumblr. That's not time. That's not quality time living. And so Wu says, you're putting up all kinds of bullshit. Or literally, he says, you put all kinds of bullshit up. And then continues, you're just completely lying at the beginning of this about the high standards of the standards of care, meaning the protocols that the organization Bowers was the president of from 2022 to 2024, WPATH, the World Professional Association for Transgender Health. So the controversies being that there's a chapter on eunuchs and on non-binary and on children in which there are no age recommendations for children with starting all this kind of macabre medicalization. Okay, so Bowers then says there's still letters that are required. And then Wu is shouting, there are letters that are required. You're changing the subject. They've been eliminated for facial feminization surgery. And then Bowers, talking at the same time, says, it has not been adopted entirely. meaning, I guess, that it has not been adopted entirely, that there shouldn't be letters from a psychologist saying, yes, I have given therapy to this person for, you know, a year and now they need to do this, medicalization. Anyway, then Wu says they've been completely removed, meaning letters, from HRT, which stands for hormone replacement therapy, which means estrogen into the male body and testosterone into the female body. That's what we're talking about, continues Wu. So stop bullshitting everyone. And then Bowers again says, you're yelling. And Wu says, I'm yelling because you're being dishonest. And then the host, Alex, says, let me just ask a question to both of you because, and then Bowers has to interrupt. My expertise is in surgery. It is not in hormones. Well, Bowers was just the president of the whole organization, so therefore he should be informed about the aspects of hormones, non-binary, about the clinicians who are not requiring letters, etc. So Alex continues, how does a patient, let's say a 14-year-old, how do they give informed consent? That is a question that comes up in critiques of the Standards of Care 8 all the time. And then Bowers goes into this business about they're not emancipated adults, meaning a 14-year-old. So they are not able to give informed consent. And then Bowers goes into, well, we need informed consent at least from one parent, but preferably two. And consent, and they must sign consent for that individual. Now, Bowers does this thing of taking up the time on the clock by repeating himself over and over again. And I know this very well from my narcissistic ex-husband. And I know also the tendency to interrupt and cut people off very well. This is just really quite classic. And Alex continues after this BSing that Bowers does. Do children, do you think, have a sense of what the complications could be? You talked about this and offered some warnings. I think he's referring back to what Bowers had said previously, years ago, a couple of years ago, about the fact that you're not going to have sexual function after surgeries that Bowers does. Or you're not going to have, you're not going to experience the male orgasm you would have had if you are like Jazz Jennings and you have your genitals all rearranged by exactly Dr. Bowers. Okay, so, and then Bowers says that's a very important point. And how do we say to an 11-year-old or a 12-year-old, how do you present the future in a way that can account for what they may face in the future? And then he continues to say the same thing over and over again without saying, how that should be unwound from the spool and handled. They dance around and dance around and dance around, and it's quite remarkable. And I really think that people need to be sure to make copies of this. I'm not this tech person, so but to make sure that if it gets taken down, this is why I'm transcribing, if it gets taken down, that we still have it. So smell the flowers, go out for walks. It's kind of a chilly April day here, but I am going to be doing some work outside in the garden nevertheless. And, see you the next time. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe.